Good afternoon. This is Financial Literacy 101. I'm Ross World. I'm your host. Today I will be discussing Reparations Part 1. That's Reparations Part 1. And I want to get right into it. I don't want to be before you long, but I do have quite a bit of information to go over. I want to start off with a certain tone, okay? I'm going to read a portion of Frederick Douglass' speech to the Anti-Slavery Society in Rochester, New York. And what he called it was, "What to the slave is the 4th of July?" Okay, what to the slave is the 4th of July. Now, this was, he did this speech back in July 5th, 1852 at Corinthian Hall in Rochester, New York. Now, of course, in 1852, slavery was still going on if we go by the official of 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation. So I'm going to be reading this speech, excuse me, as I'm looking at my notes, or rather this speech, only a small portion of this speech, okay? But I just want to set the tone of this video about reparations part 1. There's 2 parts to reparation. This is part 1. I say it with a sad sense of disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you, has brought strife and death to me. This 4th of July is not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in feathers into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhumane mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak to this day? If so, there is a parallel to your conduct. And let me warn you that it is dangerous to copy the example of a nation whose crimes, lowering up to heaven and were thrown down by beneath of the Almighty, bearing that the nation irrevocable ruin, I can to this day take up the plaintive lament of a pale and woe-smitten people. By the rivers of Babylon there were set down, yea, we wept, we remember Zion, we hang our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there they carry us away captive, required of us a song, and they who wasted us required of us mirth, saying, sing us one of those songs of Zion. How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? If I forgot thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. If I do forget, if I do not faithfully remember those bleeding children of sorrow this day, may my right hand forget her cunning, and may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. He means that he's going to shut up, he's going to be quiet, because essentially he has nothing to say. To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs, and to chime in with their popular theme would be treason most scandalous and shocking, and will make me a reproach before God and the world. My subject, then fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day and its popular characteristics from the slave point of view. Standing there, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine, I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or to the professions of the present, and the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is feathered, in the name of Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate, I will not excuse, I will not use the severest language I can command and yet not one word shall escape me, that any man whose judgment is not binded by prejudice, or who is not a heart or slaveholder, shall not confess to be right and just. Okay, this is reparations part one. Now, if you want to look at that particular speech, that was a speech that Frederick Douglass gave to an anti-slave movement in Corinthian Hall, Rochester, New York. Okay, so let's start off the reparations talk with slavery. Okay, I'm gonna be going around slavery, and I'm gonna try to make this as pertinent. It's not, I'm not gonna try to rush through it, but at the same time, I don't want to make this an extremely long video. I'm trying to keep you guys captivated and tuned in into what I'm getting to. Okay, this is part one of part two. All right, we understand in 1619, 19 or 20 slaves, they reached Jamestown, Virginia, okay, in 1619, and they were brought there by English settlers or English privateers. Supposedly, they got captured by Portuguese, okay, a Portuguese slave ship actually got captured by some English privateers, and they were brought to Jamestown, Virginia for the first slaves to be officially recorded in the slave books of 1619 for Jamestown, Virginia. Now, the first slavery that I could actually research, of course, there's a lot of history out there, but I try to find maybe 3, 4 to even 6 forms of the same information that I can really collab together and say, okay, this seems more factual, because we understand that history is his story. However, that particular writer or author wrote it. But when you get so much information and it collabs together and combines together, then you're getting closer to the truth, in which most of us really don't know because we didn't live back then. Okay, so, but we understand that the first enslaved Africans are being recorded in the island of Hispaniola. Okay, Hispaniola, that was back in 1501, the first slaves, okay, around the age of 1493 and 1501, in the island Hispaniola, which is in the Caribbean, which is also considered part of the West Indies, which is also the Dominican Republic and the Republic of Haiti, okay? That makes up the island of Hispaniola, which was recorded as the first slaves of the first African slaves being enslaved by another people, okay, in 1501. So we'll keep it there. Now, we also understand in 1865, because of the Confiscation Acts, as well as the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, that Lincoln supposedly freed the slaves. Now, in my opinion, I'm very biased. In my opinion, Lincoln freed the slaves to win the war. Okay, not because slavery was wrong. He freed the slaves to win the war. Now, this wasn't ratified, and ratified means like it wasn't official, even though they may have made up the act, but ratification back then mean, okay, now it's official. Now, even though that was in 1863, it wasn't ratified to 1865, okay? It wasn't ratified to 1865. We understand that the conditions of slavery were harsh. Now, we know that, men and women were raped, maimed, burned, hung, dismembered, whipped, chained, bond, put in hot boxes in the ground. We don't really need to go over all the agony and atrocities that was brought upon the African people at that time. Essentially, we're the descendants of those people if you are an African American native to this land, meaning that your ancestors were slaves here in this land. Now, let's move right into the Missouri Compromise, okay? And that was legislation that provided admission for Maine to be part of the United States, but Maine also to be a free state along with Missouri as a slave state. So Maine was coming to the United States as a free state, and Missouri was coming into America as a slave state. This maintaining a balance between the North and the South in the United States Senate, okay, as part of the compromise. So this is the Missouri Compromise. Now, slavery was prohibited north of the 3630 parallel, which excluded Missouri, which is very important, okay? Then the 16th United States Congress passed the legislation on March 3rd, 1820, and President James Monroe signed it on March 6th, 1820. Now, moving right along into the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Now, let me talk about that really quickly. Now, in that particular act, No, in those particular states, Nebraska and Kansas had slaves, but most citizens who had slaves have, anywhere between 1 and 3, according to the record books. They had between 1 and 3, and there were mostly women and children who cleaned the house and cooked the food, and some people just had kids to play with their kids. Go figure that. So in 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act created the Nebraska Territory. The act overturned the Missouri Compromise, okay? So this act, the Kansas and Nebraska Act, overturned the Missouri Compromise by allowing legislators of the Nebraska and Kansas territories to determine whether to permit or abolish slavery from 1855 on. What to do about slavery was a recurring topic of debate in those particular 2 states. But to their defense, not really in their defense, because slavery is 1,000% wrong. We all know this. They didn't have as many slaves as the southern states, okay? But there were slaves in Nebraska and Kansas, okay? And the only reason I told you about the Kansas-Nebraska Act, because it overturned the Missouri Compromise, okay? I'm getting somewhere, believe me. Now we're going to move into the 1862 Homestead Act, okay? The 1862 Homestead Act. Now, the Homestead Act was to accelerate settlement of the U.S. Western Territories by allowing American citizens, including freed slaves. Think about that. 1862, freed slaves. Didn't we just talk about the Emancipation Proclamation? Then we talk about the official date that slaves were freed. Now, granted, there were free states, okay? There were free states. Now, the 1862 Homestead Act was mainly for Kansas and Nebraska. But we understand the Missouri Compromise in 1820, Maine became a free state, Missouri became a slave state. But then in 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, okay, overturned the Missouri Compromise by basically allowing those states to determine if they want slavery or not. But in 1862, the Homestead Act mainly pertained to Nebraska and Kansas, okay? Nebraska and Kansas, because this is where, and I'm going to read it, it says that including free slaves, okay? This act also included free slaves, to put in and claim up to 160 free acres of federal land. Remember though, you ever seen those old movie shows when they used to go out and they used to race for land? This was part of the 1862 Homestead Act, okay? But it said to put up the claim to 160 free acres of federal land, mainly in Kansas and Nebraska. Okay, this is right from the record books. So July 4th, 1861, this was a speech by Lincoln, told the nation that the purpose of America's government was to elevate the condition of men, to lift artificial burdens from all shoulders, and to give everyone an unfettered start and a fair chance in the race of life, okay? He followed through with the passage of the Homestead Act, which remained active for 124 years until it was repealed in 1976. Now, I wasn't born in 76, but I was definitely born in the 70s, and I didn't know about this, okay? So hopefully you guys are understanding this timeline that I'm actually building. And it resulted in 10% of the U.S. land, which equates to 270 million acres of land to be settled. Okay, now let's talk about the Black Reconstruction, aka Reconstruction, aka the Second Constitution. Now, I'm gonna give you the definition of this word, not to insult your intelligence, but to give it relevance so you understand when I'm going through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which is considered the Black Reconstruction, aka the Second Constitution. Ratification. So the definition of ratification is the action of signing or giving formal consent to a treaty, contract, or agreement, making it officially valid. Okay, so that would plays a role here. So the 13th Amendment passed by Congress on 31st January 1865 was ratified 6 December 1865. I'm only going to be reading section 1 of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Now, granted, the 14th Amendment has about 5 or 6 sections, and the 13th and 15th, they have, I think the 15th has 2 sections, and the 13th have 2 sections, but they're mostly to officially make them valid, essentially. So the 13th Amendment, section 1, and we're going to break this down very quickly. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction, so their territories as well. I'm going to read it again. I want you to really build a construct and break it down. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Mass incarceration. Okay, I'm gonna break it down and I'm gonna move on because I don't want to stay here. We can get tied up here too long. So it says, except as a punishment for crime, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. So I'm going ahead and bump involuntary servitude. I'm just going to say slavery, except as a punishment for crime, mass incarceration of African Americans. So slavery in America is still legal according to the 13th Amendment. Why do you think there is mass incarceration? Because it's a form of slavery, ladies and gentlemen. It's a form of slavery. I'm going to move along. I don't want to stay here. The 14th Amendment, passed by Congress on 13th June 1866, ratified 9 July 1868. Section 1. All persons born, and granted, don't forget, this was made, Congress passed this in 1866. When was the Emancipation Proclamation? 1865. So throughout the whole entire U.S., slaves were free. Key point. So passed in the 13th of July, 1866, and ratified on 9 July, 1868, almost a year later, a matter of fact, 13 months later. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privilege of immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So basically, from 1868, if you were born in America as an African American, okay, as a descendant of a slave, you was an American citizen. And no state, okay, where you reside shall make or enforce any law which shall break, okay, that means break, the privileges of or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. Life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deny to any person with its in its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. Why do you think they incarcerate us and then take our land? Why do you think back in 1862 we talked about the Homestead Act? See, I like to read stuff to you so you understand that this is coming from many resources. This is not me just speaking about it. Why do you think back in 1862 during the Homestead Act, where they talk about freed slaves could actually go out in Nebraska and Kansas and grab land, but don't forget in 1855 they gave the right for those two states, okay, overturning the Missouri Compromise, for them to decide if they want to have slaves or not. First they say, you know what? No. No slaves above the 30, 36 parallel line. Oh, you know what? No, we're going to overturn that. You guys can do what you must. So do you think that slaves or freed slaves had land in Kansas and Nebraska before 1865? And if they did, how long did they have it? And was it passed down to their descendants? And if it was, did they get killed? Did they get incarcerated and be taken away? Because right here in the 14th Amendment, it said we're citizens after 1868. 1868. See, here's the thing. 1865, we were free. It wasn't until 3 years later that we were actually citizens. Okay? Because we understand there's 15 amendments in the Constitution, but these came later. Okay? These came later. This is the second Constitution, or they call Black Reconstruction. I want you to think about that, because they had to put out and say neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except for a punishment for a crime. You see how we're going back and forth here, but I'm making a huge point here. 15th Amendment passed by Congress 26 February 1869, ratified 3 February 1870. Section 1, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So why was Martin Luther King marching for voting rights? Why is there such thing called voter suppression? I'm gonna read it again, because we understand this is back in the 1800s, and this him marching on Selma for voting rights, etc., was in the 1960s. This is like 100 years later, guys. And some of you still believe that racism, prejudice, discrimination doesn't exist. Some of you, not all of you, some of you do, I promise you, because you may have white friends. I have white friends too. This has nothing to do with white people, okay? This has everything to do with the systems in place that white people made to keep us down. Now, today, I don't think that my white friends, okay, would enslave me, but who knows? I don't live back then. Who knows what they would have done, okay? I'm not taking away from relationships and business relationships that you guys have built, okay? This is understanding your history. This is understand Western civilization and American history that accounts to African-American people who are the descendants of slaves, okay? Not Africans who came over here and naturalized and became citizens. This doesn't really pertain to them. This pertains to us, that we've had a foot on our neck even back in the 1800s. It doesn't matter. I guess laws don't matter, right? But we always want them to pass a law. And this is an amendment. This is what the country is actually founded on, was the Constitution. I'm going to read it again. I'm going to move on. 15th Amendment, passed by Congress, 26 February 1869, ratified 3 February 1870, Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race. And we understand race is actually a man-made thing. Scientifically, race does not exist. Color or previous condition of servitude. So that means that when they was making contracts for slaves or to other slaves, that all that is wiped away, all that's erased, that's eradicated. I'm gonna move on because I'll stay there. Reparations. Let's talk about reparations. See, reparations, they talk about, and I'm gonna get into this general his General Sherman. We're gonna get into that, but it was basically about the redistribution of land. Okay, at the beginning of the war, they talked about it at the beginning of the war because they wanted to give freedmen, okay, aka previous slaves, land to redistribute some of the wealth from the South so they wouldn't be as powerful, because at that time the South had more land than the North. Now, in 1863, President Abraham Lincoln ordered 20,000 acres of confiscated southern land in South Carolina to be sold to freedmen, okay, to freedmen or free black people or African Americans at that time in 20-acre plots, okay, 20 acres. So you get 20 acres, you get 20 acres, you get 20 acres, you get 20 acres, okay? But the Secretary of the Treasurers, Salmon Chase, expanded the offer to 40 acres per family, okay? So the Secretary of the Treasury, Salmon Chase, expanded the offer to 40 acres per family. Now, in January 1865, General William T. Sherman met with 20 African-American leaders who told him, now most of these leaders were ministers, by the way, most of these leaders supposedly were ministers, told him that land ownership was the best way for blacks to secure and enjoy their newfound freedom. On January 16th of that year, Sherman issued Special Field Order number 15, okay? Number 15. Now, what's funny about this, I have a lot of people, black, white, Hispanic, talking about that this general didn't have any power, any federal government backing legislative. But I say, okay, where's the proof in that? Okay, because I'm going to give you a lot of information in a small snippet to show you how much power that this one general had, because I don't see a record of President Lincoln saying, I'm directing you to go about and handle with the Freedmen Bureau, okay, the Freedmen Bureau, to redistribute the southern land from South Carolina, Georgia to Florida on the coastal, right? That's going to be in part 2. We're going to talk about that. What was the actual land? It was from South Carolina, Georgia to Florida. I'm going to continue. On January 16th, that year, those 20 leaders asked to buy land. Exactly. So it goes back. I read one of your notes because it's disappearing, guys. I'm sorry. It goes back to the 1862 Homestead Act, where they were talking about give away free land. But if you also read, they were also trying to sell African Americans, okay, free slaves land in those states for $10. For $10, okay? But then there's some information out there about the general that he said he didn't give land to anyone. Yeah, there's some information that supposedly that General William T. Sherman wrote a note or a letter stating that he didn't give land to anyone. But anyway, I'm gonna move on because there's a lot of information, but I'm almost done because I don't want to bore you. On January 16th that year, Sherman issued Special Field Order number 15. The order reserved coastal land in Georgia, South Carolina for black settlement. Each family will receive 40 acres. Now later, Sherman agreed to loan the settlers Army mules. Okay, loan the settlers Army mules. 6 months after Sherman issued the order, 40,000 former slaves lived on 400,000 acres of coastal land. Now, in March, Congress seemed to indicate plans for widespread land reform when it authorized the Freedmen's Bureau to divide confiscated land into small plots for sale to blacks and loyal Southern whites. Now, I wonder, why did Congress authorize the Freedmen's Bureau? Some people may, why would you get together a bureau for freedmen if it wasn't for a purpose? Now, there's many purposes out there, but again, we are on reparations, so I don't want to get too far into the topic, okay? Because there's going to be some more information that's going to come into the second part of this video, reparations part 2. So supposedly he authorized that Freedmen's Bureau to divide confiscated lands into small plots for sale to blacks and loyal Southern whites, okay? Less than a year after Sherman's order, President Andrew Johnson intervened. Good old Andrew Johnson intervened and ordered that the vast majority of confiscated land be returned to its former owners. This included most of the land that the freedmen had settled. The federal government disposed of, okay, dispossessed tens of thousands of black landowners or landholders, because they really never owned the land, landholders. In Georgia, South Carolina, some blacks actually fought back and they lost their life and their land, or the land they were supposedly to have for themselves. Driving away, but the blacks who had guns at this time drive away some of the owners, but of course, people came back in posses and killed them off. In the end of only 2,000 blacks supposedly retained their land and had won and worked after the war. Only 2,000 blacks. Now, other provisions existed for blacks to acquire land, but they were ineffective. See, prices under the Southern Homestead Act were too high for former slaves with almost no capital. The development of black codes and the use of long-year contracts to bind labor also made acquiring land nearly impossible. The federal retreat from land redistribution was not only a disappointment that cultivated a sense of betrayal, it was also a missed opportunity for economic reform that might have allowed Southern blacks to consolidate and hold political gains made during the early years of Reconstruction. So I was reading, I couldn't see some of you guys' notes, but if you will, repost your notes and we can go and have a quick discussion before I get out of here. But I wanted to give that information in this first part of Reparations Part 1. Now, Reparations Part 2 is going to contain some more information about reparation, some very contradicting information that I've went over, and also some ideas I have of reparation. Okay, it's a temporary reservation. Education was big. Sherman Reservation was given back, but other land was available. Okay. Yeah, Mike Pulaski. Yeah. Remember, I told you I was gonna do these videos. So, Mike, this shout out goes out to you. I was gonna do these 2 videos. It says by 1910, blacks owned 16 million acres. Okay. That's actually true, Mike. I understand that, but we have to understand that 1910 there was no officially form of slavery, but those acres of land was stolen, were cheated, were robbed from African American people. That's why we don't own as nearly as much land anymore, because quite frankly, we wanted to do what the other Americans did to their land, was pass it down from generation to generation. All right. Okay, you say not true? Okay, that's your opinion. I respect your opinion. But from what my research tells me and from what I know is that land was stolen, it was cheated and or taken away, or the people were killed off their land just as well as the Native Americans were, in order to redistribute land to white people. See, he says there were successful cotton crops, failures, and the Great Depression. Okay, yeah. I understand Great Depression 1929, but that does not mean that you lose your land, because let me ask you this, and this one goes directly out to Mike. When did Americans start to pay property tax? Okay, and land, okay, and there went their land. Okay, so you think that 16 million acres of land disappeared for black people because of the Great Depression. Okay. See, Mike, here's the thing. I want you to think about you owning land, and I want you to think about the Great Depression, and I want you to think about property tax, and I also want you to think about, if I have land, no matter what goes on, what can I do with land? What can I do with land? Okay, because the Great Depression doesn't equate for me selling my land for money. Okay, because if I have land, I have a place to live, I have a place to cultivate and grow crops and grow food. So why would I give away my land? Why would I sell my land? That's just a question. Someone write that up. There was limited protections for ADOS. I'm gonna see if I can change this, guys. I don't know why. Okay, there was limit to no protections from the government for ADOS. Okay, that was the beginning of the machine age and jobs. Okay, I understand that, but again, it still gives no right just cause of why should an African American who started in slavery to give up their land for what? A couple of dollars? A couple of dollars? Because here's the thing, and maybe later on in the new year, I'm gonna go over all the different types of Black Wall Streets. Because the most famous one, of course, is Tulsa, Oklahoma, but there was a lot more. You can't eat cotton. But here's the thing about that, Mike. Good point. But the thing about that, Mike, is this. You can't eat cotton. But these former slaves and these former descendants of slaves, right? Guess what they could do? They could sell it. They could sell it. But you sell it. There you go, Jeff. Yeah, Henry. Thank you. You can sell it because they were still using cotton. We understand during slavery, America supplied the world 90%. 90% of the world's cotton came from America. So yes, they could sell it. And here's another thing. Even though African Americans at that time, they knew they was going to get robbed, they knew they was going to get gypped, they still could have got something for the cotton they would have sold. And here's another one. Now, let's say, for instance, I had, I don't know, 10 acres of land. Let's say if I had 10 acres of land. How many acres of land do I need to grow cotton? How many? Could I grow tomatoes, potatoes, something? Say, Wayne Peters said the South provided all of the cotton for the North. Good point. What else do we got? Why is not showing you guys notes? Here we go. Cotton crop failures 1920s. Okay. Okay, Mike, you're telling me to Google it, right? And we're having a discussion here. We all are having a discussion. This is not a lecture. This is information that I've researched. 1, 2, my opinions. 3, my biases. And number 4, we're having an intelligent conversation about slavery and reparations. This is not a full documentary. This is the first 30 minutes was going over it. And the second 15 to 30 minutes, we're just talking about it, okay? Getting some perspective and understanding about it. So again, I understand. You can say 1920 about the failure of crops. Don't forget, cotton wasn't the only thing that was cultivated in America at the time. It was just one of the biggest things. Don't forget, what else do we have? Sugarcane, rice, and Indiegogo, okay? Sugarcane, rice, cotton, and Indiegogo was one of some of the biggest ones, okay? Thank you, Wayne Peterson. Cotton was the only crop, okay? So we understand that we were in communities because we was basically segregated to certain parts of the U.S. Certain parts of the U.S. So there were always Black towns up and along the coast because that's where they made us settle at. They wanted us in particular towns and places so we wouldn't have spread out amongst all the white people, okay? Can you please take your focus off of this devil? No. I don't believe he's a devil. He may have some information. We all have a different version of information, is what we believe. And we're just having a casual, intelligent conversation. Mike Pulaski has not been disrespectful. He's been giving his perspective and what he has learned. So we're having a really good discussion. Everybody is chiming in. Everybody's giving input, and I respect it all. It's always good to have an intelligent conversation. We don't have to agree, but we have to be respectful, okay? We don't have to agree, but we have to be respectful. Me and Mike can disagree on every single thing I say, but he has been respectful. I just want to put out that disclaimer. So I'm enjoying the conversation, guys. I truly am, okay? I truly am. So let's not call out names. Let's not be disrespectful. Let's be respectful of everyone in the chat, okay? Please, let's be respectful of everyone in the chat. All right. So Wayne Peterson said the facts are the facts. So here's the facts. Here are the facts. Here's the facts as I see them, okay? Slavery did happen. We can argue how slaves got to America. Africans sold other Africans into slavery. Africans were stolen by European slave traders, the Portuguese, the Belgians, your Dutch, your English, your French, so on and so forth. Okay, they came to different parts of Africa. They either colonized us or put us part of the translated slave trade, where 5 million African Americans were brought to America. or originally a million and 5 million to Brazil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. This is the point. This is the point. When we look at other mass slaves, okay, that's not a good terminology. When we look at other countries that did an entire race because of their race or religion wrongly, we are one that have never received any form of reparations. Okay, regardless of William Sherman, okay, of General Sherman or President Lincoln or President Andrew Johnson or any of the above. When you look at the Japanese internment or the Japanese concentration camps, what did Ronald Reagan do? What did Ronald Reagan do? I'm gonna tell you what Ronald Reagan did. Ronald Reagan gave 1,100 Japanese descendants $20,000. And I think during that time, it would have been worth $42,000. Okay. I can't really speak to the Jewish only because Germany is paying their reparations, but everybody sees what they're doing is correct. And you'll never pay off the debt what you did to a people. That's just my opinion. But you can try. Germany till this day is still paying reparation to the Jewish people. They are. Over $70 billion to the Jewish people. Now, this came during the Third Reich, which is the Nazi regime. Okay, they deal in ranks, REICH. Rank. And this is there's their home, this is their reparations they're paying to the Jewish people. Now in America, Japanese and Native Americans have and is receiving their reparations. Why aren't we? Now you say, well, this was a myth that General Sherman never met with black leaders to discuss redistribution of land. Or the Freedmen's Bureau, that had nothing to do with land redistribution. It had to do with something organizing blacks to laws and legislative and equal rights, etc. See, I'm trying to learn, Mike, but your white push keeps getting in the way. I thought this was a financial channel. Sterling Lee, this is the financial channel. This is the financial channel. And guess what reparations? Guess what reparations is? It's finances. See, this is about economics. This is about economics. Okay? And that's what I need for you guys to understand. This is a Black financial channel, but it's about economics. Wayne Peterson says the government will never be able to repay the debt of American slavery, but they can most definitely help close the racial wealth gap. Yes, they can. But I want to speak to Sterling real quick. This is a financial channel. And if you look at a lot of my other videos, I speak about finances all the time. But reparations is finances. This is economics. Okay, this is economics. So I like to break down certain things. I rarely ever talk about history. Always talking about getting out of debt, investing, saving, creating a budget, and raising your credit score. But I like to talk about reparations because we need to understand how it came about, if it's true, if it's false. But most certainly for people that look like me, who ancestors came over as slaves, okay, who were in bondage as slaves, the question is, did someone promise reparations, 40 acres and a mule and $100? And even if they didn't, if this was all made up by black leaders, do we deserve reparations? That's the question. If everybody else is receiving their reparations for the way their ancestors were treated, then the question remains, do we deserve it? That's the question, Sterling. So it is a financial channel. And I speak about finances, 99.9% of the chance. But today we're talking about reparations, and reparations is finance. I guarantee if we would have received what we received, or we had the right and the opportunity to keep what we had, those 16 million acres, then I believe a higher percentage of Black people would be in a better place than they were. Wayne Peters, it's sad that we have to explain to people that we deserve reparations for the worst atrocities in American history. It's sad. It's sad. Here's the thing. There's some people out there who family supposedly didn't have anything to do with slavery at all, right? Their ancestors, no one. They didn't own slaves. They didn't have nothing to do with slavery. And their argument is, why do I have to pay with my tax dollars for African-American descendants of slaves to get reparations? Okay, to get reparations. Then the question will be is, how are you in a better position and we don't all see a race? Well, we need to understand of today's race, right? Because we understand that race, when it comes to human beings, Homo sapiens is made up. It's made up. It's not scientific. Because in a race, right, we all start at the same starting line. But in America, we all see it that Caucasian Americans or people of white descent, they start off with a hell of a head start. That's the way we look at this. That's the way we look at this. Now, not Wayne Peters, Mike Pulaski. Sounds as though if you are Polish with your last name. I don't know. I'm just speculating. I think we went over there. I think you are Polish. Now, here's the thing. If you would do anything, instead of Googling it, you can get this all in one book, and then you can take this book and fact check it. By Dr. Claude Anderson, Black Labor, White Wealth, and I'm going to leave it alone. All right. Central people, there are thousands of companies in America that are still repaying the benefit of slavery from many generations ago. You are correct. They're still reaping benefits from slavery. Yes, they are. But Mike, I want you to go out and, if you will, either check it out at the library if it's there, or buy Dr. Claude Anderson's Black Labor, White Wealth, and you will see the atrocities through legal legislators, right, laws and regulations and acts with Americans, okay, white Americans have done to the African-American people to keep us down. And I'm going to comment one more thing about you said, and I'm going to move on. You said that no descendants have ever received reparations. What? Native Americans, bruh. Native Americans. They're still paying Native Americans. They're still giving them free land. Okay? If they subscribe to a tribe and the tribe say, yeah, he's Chickasaw, he's red-nosed, white-tailed Indian, he is Blackfoot, he's Comanche, he's this, he's that, then they get free land. Thank you. It is a great book, Cedric. It is a great book. So when you say descendants are not receiving reparations, yes, they are. A treaty, not what you think a treaty is. The treaty was based upon reparations, Mike. It's not a different thing. We have to understand history, guys, and how things are actually made. You said a treaty is reparations when it's giving you free land, free benefits, and you're tax-free, and you have the right to call your tribal land, your reservations, sovereign land, where you have your own police. You don't pay taxes to the government because they say, you know what? We did this to your people and we have a treaty. That treaty is reparations. Okay? That treaty is reparations. And you're right, a treaty is forever unless it's reversed or revoked. So when we look at those things, did you ever hear about the time where they was actually thinking about giving African Americans land and making a treaty with us for reparations? Right? They're like, we're going to leave them over there. And the only way that people can live with them if they are law enforcement and are soldiers, if they're not black. Look that up. Okay? Look that up. I I don't think he's trolling, King. I don't think he's trolling. But like I said, after I made these comments, I'm moving on. Not to be disrespectful to him or you, I'm moving on to something totally different. All right. I'm going to give you a snippet of Reparations Part 2. And quite frankly, I'm going to go over another piece of information about Reparations Part 2. And I'm also going to give what I've seen other Black philosophers, of other Black financial people, as well as myself, about what is the road and what we believe that we as a people should receive as reparations. Some people believe $80,000. I'm not opposed to that. Some of us believe we still should get 40 acres. And I say, we're not a mule, right? We need a tractor. So whatever it is, 40 acres, 80,000 or 100,000, and a tractor. B, I want to be a little more realistic, because we understand the population of America is 330 million people, roughly. And I can see them giving us anywhere from 5 to 10 acres of land, anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000, and free college grants and loan forgiveness where we don't pay anything back for my generation, my son's generation, and his generation. Okay, 3 generations back. Okay, 3 generations back. So we have to understand in these conversations, guys. What's going on, Joseph? Get offline and go to sleep. But here's my thing. We all have our different beliefs. We all have read either the same and or different histories, not history, histories that sometimes intertwine and sometimes they retract. Sometimes they intertwine and sometimes they retract. So it takes for intelligent people like you and I, all of you and myself, to deconstruct the information. And then it comes a time where we become very human and we give our opinion and we give our biases. Okay, we're very biased. I'm very biased because guess what? I will love a check for 50,000, 80,000. I will love 5 to 10 acres of land. And see, here's the thing. I thought about this. I said, you know what? I don't want to live in South Dakota. I don't want to live in North Dakota. I want to live in here and there. I want to live in Florida, in Texas, in Colorado, in Washington State, in New York. Why? Because there's a lot of Black people there. But they say, you know what? We're going to do reparations. And we're going to give you North and South Dakota. Think about that, Black people. They're going to give us North and South Dakota. So Tyler Perry, yeah, we know you set up in Atlanta, Georgia, but you can move all that up there. We can have our own Black economy, our own Black cities in those 2 states. We can put South Dakota and North Dakota on the map, and we can probably even rename the states, because we understand places where they have a lot of their GDP for their particular state is enriched. There's a high population of Black people. Okay, because we're essentially the major of the workforce, except for your states like Texas, where they have a large population of Hispanics, okay, that comes over. But what if they gave us North Dakota and South Dakota? Do you know that a lot of Black people would be like, I ain't moving to no goddamn North Dakota, South Dakota? Both of those states would be majority Black. Sterling says, hey, Ross, I've been watching your videos since Rossworld days, but I never heard you mention crypto, Bitcoin, only gold and silver. Crypto is also a hedge fund against inflation. Well, Sterling, I have talked about cryptocurrency. I also talked about Acoin currency. Akon also made Acoin. He's also making Akon City in Senegal in Africa. So I also do Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Some of those are my later videos. I've been having this channel for about 3 years now. And believe me, I talked about cryptocurrencies quite a bit, but I've also talked about the blockchain technology, okay? Blockchain technology is a part of Bitcoin that you actually want to get into, because that is where the technology of digital currency is and going for a lot of companies. So again, let me recap. North and South Dakota, this is for example. A lot of black people wouldn't want to move there. Why? Because there's nothing there. Why? We have to go build it. It's amazing how you can give people something, but we're so used to another thing, we don't see the profit in something. You ever have somebody give you something totally free and you was like, what I'm gonna do with this? Instead of, thank you, I appreciate this. Thank you very much. Now, what can I do with this so I can be more profitable? And it doesn't mean profit as in money all the time. It can be profitable in your mental health, your religion, your spirituality, keep you busy. It could be a maze. I don't know. It could be one of those. It could be anything. Someone give you paper and pen. You're like, why you give me a paper and pen? Devise a plan. Do something with the paper and pen. The only point I'm trying to make is this. What if? What if they gave us a couple of states? What would you do? They say, well, roughly it's 40 million African Americans in America. There's 40 million African Americans in America. And I don't know the acres of each land. We're going to move. We're going to relocate all the white people, all the people out of North and South Dakota because they've done it before. They've done it before. And what we're going to do is we're going to redistribute the land of those people, okay? And we're going to give everybody 5 acres. And once we give everybody 5 acres, then we're going to, where the state capitals and the cities where you can go in and you can reoccupy and you can take over and you create, either finish those businesses or start new businesses. What if? Why do we all have to cram in Atlanta? I'm from Washington, D.C. Why do we all have to cram in Washington, D.C.? Okay. Do we all have to cram in Dallas, Texas, and Houston, Texas? We all don't have to cram in St. Louis, Missouri. We all don't have to cram in Mobile, Alabama, or Birmingham, Alabama. But what if they gave us 2 or 3 states where we all had 5 acres of land and we still had hundreds of acres of land to do business and take over and reoccupy other businesses? Hey guys, it was just a thought. This is Financial Literacy 101. This is Reparations Part 1. Reparations Part 2 be coming to you within a week, but it won't be as long. Thank everybody for their input. Sterling, thank you for your input. Wayne Peterson, Mike Pulaski, also Cendric Peoples. Thank everybody for their input. I appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation, and I see you guys real soon. Happy Sunday. Get ready for work on Monday, guys. And get ready for the new year. But anyway, I just, guys, want you to do your research, ponder on it, think about it, and let's have a better discussion tomorrow when I do Reparations Part 2. I may do Reparations Part 2 later on tonight, but most likely tomorrow. Either way, tune in. Make sure you subscribe and like and hit the notification bell so when I go live, you guys can chime in and give your comments and also what you think about what I'm saying in accordance. All right. Love you guys. Even those people I disagree with, I'm out.